The rain pounded against the windows of the grand estate. Lighting split the dark sky. Lady Margaret Ashworth stood in the shadows of the marble hallway. Her heart raced as she heard footsteps approaching. She shouldn't be here. Not in the Duke of Ravenshollow's mansion, not at midnight. But desperation had driven her to this moment.
Miss Ashworth. His deep voice cut through the darkness.
She turned. There he was, Alexander Blackthorne, the most powerful man in all of England. His dark eyes held secrets. His jaw was set with determination. Your Grace. Her voice trembled. I received your message. He stepped closer. The candlelight danced across his sharp features. You came. I wasn't certain you would. Margaret's hands shook. She clutched her cloak tighter. You said it was urgent, about my father's debts. Alexander's expression softened for just a moment. Then the mask returned. Cold, distant, powerful. Your father owes me £50,000, Miss Ashworth. The deadline was today. Her heart sank. She already knew this. The shame had been eating at her for months. We don't have the money, you know this. I do. He walked to the fireplace. The flames cast shadows on the wall. Which is why I have a proposition. Margaret swallowed hard. She'd heard whispers about the Duke's propositions. None of them were proper. None of them were safe. What kind of proposition? He turned to face her. His eyes were unreadable. I need a wife. The words hit her like a physical blow. I beg your pardon, just for one night. His voice was steady, matter of fact. There's a business dinner tomorrow evening. Very important men will be there. I need to appear settled, married. Margaret's mind raced. But you're not married. Exactly. He moved closer. She could smell his cologne. Expensive. Intoxicating. I need someone to pretend, to play the role of my devoted wife for one evening. And in return, your father's debt disappears. The offer hung in the air between them. £50,000. Gone, just like that. All for one night of pretending. I don't understand. Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. Why me? Why not hire an actress? Someone who does this professionally. Alexander's laugh was bitter. Because you're a lady, Miss Ashworth, born and bred. You know how to move in these circles, how to speak to these men. An actress would be spotted immediately. He was right. Margaret had been raised in high society, before her father's gambling had destroyed their fortune, before the shame had driven them into hiding. What exactly would I have to do? Attend the dinner, smile, make pleasant conversation, convince a room full of businessmen that the Duke of Ravenshollow is a happily married man. It sounded simple. Too simple. That's all? His eyes darkened. There would be certain expectations. We would need to appear affectionate, intimate. Married couples have a way of looking at each other, touching each other. Heat flooded Margaret's cheeks. Touching. Nothing improper. His voice was gentler now. A hand on your back, an arm around your waist. The kind of small gestures that married people share. Margaret's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd never been touched by a man. Not intimately. Not the way he was describing. And after the dinner, you go home. The debt is forgiven. We never speak of this again. The offer was generous, too generous. There had to be a catch. Why is this dinner so important to you? Alexander hesitated. For the first time since she'd arrived, he looked uncertain. There are men coming tomorrow night. Investors. They have traditional views about marriage, about stability. They won't do business with a bachelor. They believe unmarried men are unreliable, unfocused. So you're willing to pay £50,000 to fool them for one evening? I'm willing to forgive £50,000 of debt. There's a difference. Margaret walked to the window. The storm was getting worse. Lighting illuminated the grounds of the estate. Everything looked different in the harsh light. Distorted, dangerous. She thought about her father, broken and ashamed in their tiny cottage. He'd aged 10 years in the past 6 months. The worry was killing him slowly. She thought about her younger sister Emma, only 17, beautiful and bright. Emma deserved a season, a proper introduction to society, a chance to marry well, but there was no money for any of that now. One night, one evening of pretending, and all their problems would disappear. What if someone recognizes me? Margaret asked, what if they know I'm not really your wife? They won't. Alexander joined her at the window. He stood close enough that she could feel the heat from his body. You've been out of society for months. Most people assume you've married and moved away. It's the perfect cover. Margaret closed her eyes. When she opened them, her reflection stared back at her in the dark glass. She looked older than her 23 years, worn down by worry and shame. If I agree to this, her voice was steady now. Resolved, I have conditions. Alexander raised an eyebrow. You're hardly in a position to make demands, Miss Ashworth. Perhaps not. Margaret turned to face him. But if you want me to convince a room full of men that I'm madly in love with you, I need to understand what I'm getting into. He studied her face, looking for weakness, for signs that she might betray him. What conditions? I want the debt forgiveness in writing, signed and witnessed, before the dinner begins. Agreed. I want a proper dress, something befitting a duchess. I won't embarrass you in my current wardrobe. That can be arranged. And I want your word as a gentleman that nothing will happen beyond what's necessary for appearances. Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment? Relief? She couldn't tell. You have it. Margaret extended her hand. Then we have an agreement, Your Grace. He took her hand in his. His skin was warm, rough. The hands of a man who'd worked for his power instead of inheriting it. We do indeed, Your Grace. The title sent a shiver through her. Tomorrow night, for a few hours, she would be a duchess. She would wear silk and jewels. She would smile and laugh and pretend that her heart belonged to the most powerful man in England. I should go. Margaret pulled her hand free. It's late. People will talk if I'm seen leaving here. My carriage will take you home. Alexander walked to the door. And Miss Ashworth? Yes, thank you. The sincerity in his voice surprised her. This wasn't just about business for him. There was something deeper, something personal. But that wasn't her concern. She was doing this for her family, for her father's peace of mind, for Emma's future. One night, how hard could it be? The next evening arrived too quickly. Margaret stood in front of the mirror in her tiny bedroom. The dress had arrived that morning. Midnight blue silk, with silver embroidery. It fit perfectly. Someone had taken great care with the measurements. The jewels came with it. Sapphires and diamonds that caught the candlelight. They felt heavy around her neck. Foreign, like they belonged to someone else. Emma helped her with her hair, pinning it up in an elaborate style that took an hour to perfect. You look like a princess, Emma whispered, like something from a fairy tale. Margaret wished she felt like one. Instead, her stomach churned with nerves. What if she couldn't pull this off? What if everyone saw through the charade? Tell me again why you're doing this, Emma said. Margaret had told her sister a partial truth, that she was attending a dinner as a companion to a wealthy woman, that it would help with their financial situation. She couldn't tell Emma the whole story. Her sister was too innocent, too pure. "It's just one evening," Margaret said. "One night of pretending to be someone I'm not. Then everything will be better." A knock at the door interrupted them. Margaret's heart jumped. It was time. The carriage was even grander than she'd expected. Black lacquer with gold trim, 4 matching horses, a driver in full livery. Everyone in the village would be talking about this for weeks. Alexander was waiting inside. He wore formal evening wear, black coat, white shirt. He looked every inch the powerful Duke. But when he saw her, his expression changed. "You look," he paused, searched for words. "Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful." Heat rose in Margaret's cheeks. "Thank you, Your Grace." "Alexander." His voice was soft. "Tonight you must call me Alexander. We're married, remember?" The word sent a strange thrill through her. Married, even pretending, felt dangerous. Exciting. Alexander. She tested the name on her tongue. It felt intimate, personal. "And you must call me Margaret." "Margaret," he smiled. The first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his entire face, made him younger, less intimidating. "It suits you." The carriage began to move. Margaret's nervousness returned full force. "Tell me about these men, the investors. What should I know about them?" Alexander's expression grew serious. "Lord Pemberton is the leader. He's old-fashioned, traditional. He believes women should be seen and not heard. Don't try to engage him in business conversation." "What about the others?" "Sir William Hartwell is Pemberton's right hand. He's more progressive, but still conservative about marriage. Then there's James Morrison. He's American, made his fortune in railways. He's more interested in results than propriety." Margaret nodded. She'd dealt with men like this before. In her father's better days, she'd hosted many dinner parties. She knew how to charm, how to make small talk, how to make men feel important. "What's the business deal?" she asked. Alexander hesitated. "It's better if you don't know the details. Just, if anyone asks, tell them I'm expanding into shipping. Nothing more specific than that." The carriage stopped. They'd arrived. Margaret could hear voices through the windows. Laughter. The clink of glasses. Her palms were sweating. "Are you ready?" Alexander asked. No, she wasn't ready at all. But her father's face flashed in her mind. Emma's bright smile, the crushing weight of debt that had destroyed their family. "I'm ready." Alexander helped her from the carriage. His hand was steady, strong. For a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like if this were real. If she really were his wife. If this life of luxury and power actually belonged to her. But it was just pretending. Just one night. The mansion was even grander than Alexander's estate. Crystal chandeliers, marble statues, paintings that were probably worth more than most people made in a lifetime. "Remember," Alexander whispered as they approached the drawing room, "we've been married for 6 months. We met at a house party. It was love at first sight." Love at first sight. Margaret tried to imagine what that would feel like, to look at someone and know immediately that they were meant to be yours forever. "Blackthorne." A loud voice boomed across the room. "There you are, my boy." A large man with white whiskers approached them. This had to be Lord Pemberton. He looked exactly as Margaret had imagined. Pompous, self-important, used to being the most important person in any room. "Pemberton." Alexander's voice changed, became more formal. more aristocratic. May I present my wife, Margaret? Margaret curtsied perfectly. Years of training kicked in automatically. Lord Pemberton. Such a pleasure to meet you. Pemberton's eyes raked over her, assessing, judging. Charming. Absolutely charming. Blackthorne. You've done well for yourself. The casual way he spoke about her made Margaret's skin crawl, like she was a prize horse being evaluated. But she smiled, played the part. Thank you, my lord. Alexander speaks of you often. It was a lie, but Pemberton preened at the compliment. Does he indeed? Well, he's a lucky man, beauty and breeding. The perfect combination. Alexander's hand found the small of her back, a gentle pressure that sent warmth through her entire body. I'm the luckiest man alive, he said. When Margaret looked up at him, something in his eyes made her breath catch. For just a moment, it didn't feel like acting. The way he was looking at her was so intense, so genuine. Come, Pemberton said. You must meet the others. Hartwell will be delighted. He was just saying how rare it is to find a properly raised young lady these days. The next hour passed in a blur. Margaret smiled until her cheeks ached. She made appropriate conversation about the weather, about fashion, about the difficulty of finding good staff. She played the perfect duchess, and Alexander played the perfect husband. His hand never left her, sometimes at her back, sometimes at her elbow. Once, daringly, he brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was so tender that several of the men's wives sighed wistfully. You two are absolutely glowing, Mrs. Hartwell said during dinner. How long did you say you've been married? 6 months, Margaret replied smoothly. Though it feels like a lifetime, in the best possible way, of course. Alexander's foot found hers under the table, a gentle pressure that made her look at him. When their eyes met, he smiled, slow and warm and private, like they shared a secret. Margaret's heart began to race for entirely different reasons. This was supposed to be pretending, acting for an audience. But the way Alexander was looking at her felt real, dangerously real. The honeymoon period, Lord Pemberton chuckled. Enjoy it while it lasts, my dear. After the first year, the bloom comes off the rose. I disagree, Alexander said firmly. Some things only grow more beautiful with time. He was looking directly at Margaret as he said it. The words hit her like a physical touch. Heat flooded her cheeks. Her breathing became shallow. This was dangerous. She was starting to forget that it was all pretense, starting to believe in the fantasy they were creating. After dinner, the men retired to the library for brandy and cigars. The women gathered in the drawing room for tea and gossip. Margaret found herself the center of attention. Tell us everything, Mrs. Morrison whispered conspiratorially. How did you catch him? The Duke of Ravenshollow was the most eligible bachelor in England. Every mother with a daughter was trying to snare him. Margaret's mind raced. She needed a story. Something romantic but believable. It was at Lady Worthington's house party, she began. I was walking in the garden early one morning. I thought I was alone, but then I heard piano music drifting from the music room. The women leaned forward eagerly. Margaret was making it up as she went along, but the story felt real in her mouth. I followed the sound. Alexander was playing. Something beautiful and melancholy. He looked so vulnerable, so different from the powerful duke everyone sees in public. How romantic! Mrs. Hartwell sighed. What happened next? He saw me standing in the doorway. I should have left. It was improper to intrude on such a private moment, but I couldn't move. The music was so beautiful, and he looked at me like he'd been waiting his whole life for me to walk through that door. The women were hanging on every word. Even Margaret was getting caught up in her own story. She could almost see it. The early morning light streaming through tall windows, Alexander's hands moving across the piano keys. The moment their eyes met, he stopped playing, Margaret continued, stood up slowly, walked over to me, and he said, she paused dramatically. He said, I've been playing that song every morning for 10 years, waiting for the person it was meant for to hear it. Several of the women actually gasped. Mrs. Morrison pressed her hand to her heart. And then he kissed me. Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. Right there in the doorway, with the morning sun streaming around us. And I knew, I just knew. This was the man I was going to marry. The silence that followed was broken by collective sighing. Margaret had spun a perfect romantic fairy tale, the kind of love story every woman dreamed of. But as she told it, something strange happened. For a moment, she almost believed it herself. Almost felt like she could remember that morning, that kiss. That moment of perfect certainty. You're glowing just talking about it, Mrs. Hartwell observed. True love. It's written all over your face. Before Margaret could respond, the men returned from the library. Alexander immediately crossed the room to her side. It was such a natural movement, like a compass needle finding north. Ladies, he said with a slight bow, I hope my wife hasn't been boring you with domestic details. Quite the opposite, Lord Pemberton boomed. She's been telling us about your courtship. Most romantic thing I've heard in years. Music and morning light and love at first sight, like something from a novel. Alexander's eyes met Margaret's. There was a question in them. A careful assessment. Had she said too much? Revealed something she shouldn't have? Margaret has always been a romantic, he said carefully. It's one of the things I love most about her. The word love sent a jolt through Margaret's system. Even though she knew it was part of the act, hearing it from his lips felt shockingly intimate. Well, Pemberton announced, I think we've kept you young people long enough. Newlyweds need their privacy, eh? Heat flooded Margaret's cheeks. She hadn't thought about what would happen after the dinner, about how the evening would end. The goodbyes took another 30 minutes. Handshakes and cheek kisses and promises to call soon. Through it all, Alexander maintained the perfect husband facade, attentive but not possessive, proud but not boastful. Finally, they were alone in the carriage. The silence felt heavy, charged. Margaret's hands shook as she removed her gloves. That went well, Alexander said eventually. Better than I'd hoped. Your investors seemed pleased. They were. Pemberton pulled me aside before we left. The deal is as good as done. Alexander loosened his cravat. You were perfect, Margaret. Absolutely perfect. The praise should have made her happy. The mission had been accomplished. Her father's debt would be forgiven. Her family was safe. So why did she feel so empty? The story about the piano, Alexander said quietly. That was creative. Margaret's cheeks burned. I'm sorry. I needed something romantic. Something believable. I didn't think. It was perfect, he interrupted. Exactly the kind of story they wanted to hear. You have quite an imagination. The carriage stopped outside Margaret's cottage. Already, the fairy tale was ending. Tomorrow she would wake up in her tiny bedroom. She would put on her old, mended dress. She would go back to being nobody special. The papers, she said suddenly. The debt forgiveness. You promised it would be in writing. Alexander reached into his coat pocket, withdrew a folded document. Already prepared, signed and witnessed this afternoon. Margaret took the papers with trembling hands. £50,000. Gone, just like that. Her father was free, Her family's honor was restored. "Thank you," she whispered. "This means everything to us." Alexander helped her from the carriage. They stood together in the moonlight outside her family's modest cottage. The contrast with the evening's luxury was jarring. "Margaret," Alexander said softly, "I want you to know, tonight wasn't just business for me." Her heart stopped. "What do you mean?" I mean, he stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the conflict in his eyes. "I mean that somewhere between the drawing room and the dinner table, I forgot we were pretending." The words hung in the air between them. Dangerous. Impossible. True. "Alexander, we can't." Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. "This was just one night. Just pretending." "Was it?" His hand came up to cup her cheek. "Because it didn't feel like pretending to me. Not when you told that story about the piano. Not when you looked at me across the dinner table. Not when you smiled like your heart was about to burst with happiness." Margaret's breath caught. Because he was right. Somewhere during the evening, the lines had blurred. The acting had become real. "We're from different worlds," she said desperately. "You're a duke. I'm nobody. The daughter of a ruined gambler. You're not nobody." Alexander's thumb traced her cheekbone. "You're the most remarkable woman I've ever met. You're brave and clever and beautiful. You saved your family tonight. That's not nobody. That's everything." Margaret closed her eyes. If she kept looking at him, she would do something foolish. Something that would ruin them both. "The debt is forgiven," she said firmly. "Our agreement is complete. We should leave it at that." "Should we?" Alexander's voice was rough with emotion. "Margaret, look at me." Against her better judgment, she opened her eyes. The intensity in his gaze took her breath away. "I'm not ready for this to be over," he said simply. "I'm not ready to go back to pretending you don't exist." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Alexander took a deep breath. "I'm saying that I want to court you, properly. Officially. I want to take you driving in the park. I want to send you flowers. I want to ask your father for permission to marry you." The world tilted on its axis. "Marry me?" "I know it's sudden. I know we barely know each other. But Margaret," his voice broke slightly, "I've never felt anything like what I felt tonight. When I looked at you across that dinner table and realized you weren't really mine, when I imagined going home to my empty house and never seeing you again, it was agony." Margaret's heart hammered against her ribs. This couldn't be happening. Men like Alexander didn't fall in love with women like her. Not in real life. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered. "Tomorrow, in the daylight, you'll realize how impossible this is." "Will I?" Alexander stepped back, gave her space to breathe. "Then let me prove you wrong. Let me court you properly. Give me a chance to show you that this isn't just the fantasy of one evening." Margaret stared at him. At this powerful, dangerous, impossible man who was offering her everything she'd never dared to dream of. "And if it doesn't work," she asked, "if you change your mind, if your friends and family disapprove, if society cuts you off for marrying beneath your station, then we'll face it together." Alexander's voice was steady, certain. "Margaret, I've spent my entire life doing what was expected of me, marrying for advantage, for political alliance, for everything except love. Tonight, for the first time, I felt what it was like to be with someone who saw me, really saw me. Not my title or my wealth or my power, just me." Tears pricked Margaret's eyes. Because she had seen him, the man behind the mask, the loneliness he tried so hard to hide, the vulnerability he showed to no one. "I need time," she said finally. "This is all so sudden, so overwhelming." "Of course," Alexander stepped back further, gave her space. Take all the time you need. But Margaret, don't decide based on fear. Don't let the voice in your head that says you're not worthy make this choice for you, because you are worthy. You're worthy of everything. He climbed back into the carriage. The driver clicked his tongue. The horses began to move. Margaret stood in her front garden, watching the most powerful man in England disappear into the darkness. Her hand still tingled where he'd touched her cheek. Her heart still raced from his impossible proposal. One night of pretending, that's all it was supposed to be. But as she watched his carriage lights fade into the distance, Margaret realized that some pretenses become more real than reality itself. Inside the cottage, Emma was waiting up. "How was it?" her sister asked eagerly. "Was it very grand? Did you meet important people?" Margaret sank into a chair by the fire. The sapphires around her neck felt impossibly heavy, like chains, like promises. She searched for words. It was more than I expected. Tell me everything. But how could she tell Emma everything? How could she explain that she'd spent the evening pretending to be married to a duke? That somewhere between the soup course and the fish course she'd fallen in love with him? That he'd asked her to marry him for real? "The woman I accompanied is very kind," Margaret said carefully, "and she's offered me a position, a more permanent arrangement." It wasn't entirely a lie. Alexander had offered her something permanent, just not what Emma would expect. "Oh, Margaret," Emma clapped her hands together. "This is wonderful." "What kind of position?" "I'm not sure yet. I need time to think about it." Over the next week, flowers arrived every day. Not the elaborate arrangements that dukes usually sent to impress society ladies. Simple bouquets of wildflowers, daisies, lavender, sweet peas. The kind of flowers that said, "I'm thinking of you," instead of "I'm trying to buy your affections." With each bouquet came a note. Never anything improper. Never anything that would compromise her if someone else read it. Just simple messages. "The garden at Ravens Hollow is beautiful this time of year. You would love the rose maze. I heard the most beautiful piano piece today. It reminded me of your laugh. The investors signed the contracts. Thank you for making it possible." Each note made Margaret's heart race. Each bouquet made it harder to remember why this was impossible. On the 7th day, Alexander came in person. Margaret was in the front garden, hanging laundry on the line. It was humbling work. The kind of thing duchesses never did, but it needed to be done, and they couldn't afford servants. The sound of horses made her look up. Alexander sat astride a magnificent black stallion. He wore riding clothes instead of formal wear. He looked younger, more approachable, but still devastatingly handsome. "Miss Ashworth." He tipped his hat politely. "I was wondering if you might join me for a ride." Margaret looked down at her work dress, at her hands, red and rough from washing, at the laundry basket at her feet. "I'm not exactly dressed for riding, Your Grace." "Alexander," he corrected gently. "And you look perfect to me." Heat flooded her cheeks. "I don't have a riding habit, or a horse." Alexander dismounted, led his horse closer to the garden gate. "I brought a mount for you, very gentle, perfect for a lady." Margaret looked past him to see a second horse, a beautiful chestnut mare with kind eyes and a side saddle. "You thought of everything. I hoped you'd say yes." Alexander's smile was uncertain, vulnerable. "I know this is unconventional. I know I should call on your father first, ask his permission, but I wanted to talk to you alone, to make sure this is what you want." Margaret's heart hammered against her ribs. What if someone sees us? Then they'll see a duke taking a ride with a lady. Nothing scandalous about that, but it felt scandalous. It felt dangerous and exciting and completely improper. A duke didn't court the daughter of a ruined gambler by taking her riding unchaperoned. I shouldn't, Margaret said. But do you want to? Alexander asked quietly. The honest answer was yes. She wanted to climb on that beautiful horse and ride away from her tiny cottage and her uncertain future. She wanted to spend an afternoon pretending she belonged in Alexander's world. Yes, she whispered. Alexander's smile was brilliant. Then that's all that matters. He helped her mount the chestnut mare. His hands were strong and steady. When their fingers touched, electricity shot through her entire body. They rode in comfortable silence for the first few minutes. The countryside was beautiful. Rolling green hills, ancient oak trees, stone walls covered in ivy. Margaret had forgotten how much she loved riding. Before her father's ruin, she'd ridden every day. You have excellent form, Alexander observed. Most ladies I know bounce around like sacks of grain. Margaret laughed. My father taught me. He said a lady should ride like she was born in the saddle. Wise man. Alexander's expression grew serious. How is he, your father? Better. Margaret guided her horse around a low branch. The debt forgiveness has given him hope again. He's even talking about looking for work. Something respectable. Something to help us rebuild. I'm glad. They reached the top of a hill that overlooked the valley. Alexander dismounted and helped Margaret down. They stood together, looking out over the landscape. Margaret, Alexander said quietly, have you thought about what I asked? About letting me court you? Margaret's heart clenched. I've thought of little else. And she turned to face him. This beautiful, powerful, impossible man who claimed to love her. Alexander, you could have anyone. Any woman in England would be honored to be your wife. Why me? Why is someone so far beneath your station? Alexander was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Do you know what my life was like before I met you? I woke up every morning in a house with 47 rooms, and I was completely alone. I attended endless social functions where everyone wanted something from me. My title, my money, my influence, but no one wanted me. He picked up a small stone, threw it across the valley. I was expected to marry eventually, for political advantage, or to consolidate wealth, or to produce an heir. Never for love. I'd accepted that. I thought love was something other people experienced, not dukes. Margaret's throat tightened. Alexander, then I met you. He turned to face her, and suddenly, for the first time in my life, someone looked at me and saw Alexander, not the Duke of Ravenshollow, not a title or a fortune, just a man. You saw my loneliness, my uncertainty, my hope that maybe, somehow, I could be worthy of something real. Tears burned Margaret's eyes. You are worthy. You're the most worthy man I've ever known. Then marry me. Alexander dropped to one knee right there on the hilltop. Not because of duty or obligation or debt. Marry me because when I look at you, I see my future. When I imagine growing old, I can't picture it without you beside me. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. This was really happening. He was really proposing, on a hillside in the middle of nowhere, with the sun shining down and the whole world spread out below them. I don't have a ring with me, Alexander continued. I didn't plan this, but Margaret, I love you. I love your courage and your kindness and the way you put your family's needs before your own. I love the way you made me forget I was pretending to be happy. You made me actually happy. Margaret's tears spilled over. Alexander, say yes. His voice was desperate now, pleading. Say yes, and let me spend the rest of my life proving that fairy tales can come true, that love is real, that two people from different worlds can build a life together. Margaret looked down at this powerful man kneeling before her, offering her everything. His heart, his name, his future. All her life she'd been told to be practical, to accept her limitations, to settle for what was possible instead of reaching for what seemed impossible. But standing on that hilltop, with Alexander's love shining in his eyes, Margaret realized that some things were worth the risk. Some chances only came once. Yes, she whispered. Alexander's face transformed. Joy replaced uncertainty. Hope replaced fear. He stood and swept her into his arms, spun her around while she laughed and cried at the same time. Yes? He asked again, as if he couldn't quite believe it. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I love you. Yes to everything. Alexander set her down gently, cupped her face in his hands. I'm going to make you so happy, Margaret. I promise you that. You already have, she said simply. And then he kissed her. There on the hilltop, with the whole world watching. It was everything Margaret had imagined a first kiss should be. Tender and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. We have a lot to figure out, he said practically. The announcement, the wedding, what people will say. Let them talk, Margaret said firmly. I'm tired of living my life based on what other people think. Alexander's smile was radiant. Have I mentioned that I love you? Once or twice. Margaret stood on her tiptoes to kiss him again. But I don't mind hearing it. The ride back to the cottage passed in a blur of planning and laughter and stolen kisses. By the time they reached Margaret's front gate, the sun was setting. I should speak to your father, Alexander said. Formally ask for his blessing. He'll be so shocked he might faint, Margaret warned. I'll be gentle. Alexander helped her dismount, though I suspect he'll be relieved to know his daughter will be well cared for. Margaret's father was indeed shocked, but after the initial surprise wore off, he was overjoyed. Alexander asked for his blessing with perfect formality, promised to cherish and protect Margaret for the rest of his life. She's the best thing in my life, her father said with tears in his eyes. The strongest person I know. You're getting a treasure. Your Grace. I know, Alexander said simply, and I'll never take that for granted. The engagement announcement caused a sensation in London society. The Duke of Ravenshollow marrying the daughter of a ruined gambler. It was scandalous, romantic, completely unprecedented. Some people disapproved, called Margaret a fortune hunter, whispered that it wouldn't last, that Alexander would come to his senses eventually. But Margaret didn't care. She was too busy being happy. The wedding was small but perfect. Held in the chapel at Ravenshollow, Emma served as maid of honor, glowing with joy for her sister. Margaret's father walked her down the aisle with pride shining in his eyes. And Alexander waited at the altar, looking like every dream Margaret had never dared to have. When their eyes met, he smiled. That slow, warm, private smile that was just for her. Dearly beloved, the minister began. We are gathered here today, but Margaret barely heard the words. She was too busy looking at her future, at the man who'd asked her to pretend to be his wife for one night and ended up making it forever. The reception was grand, but intimate, dancing and laughter and joy that felt real and earned and true. Any regrets? Alexander asked as they waltzed together for the first time as husband and wife. Margaret looked around the ballroom, at Emma dancing with a young lord who clearly couldn't take his eyes off her, at her father, healthy and happy again, talking business with Alexander's steward, at all the people who'd become her family. "None," she said firmly. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Even though I tricked you into it." Alexander's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Asking you to pretend to be my wife when I was really hoping you'd want to be my wife for real." Margaret's mouth fell open. "You planned this? The whole thing?" "Not planned, exactly." Alexander spun her gracefully around the dance floor. "But hoped for. From the moment you walked into my study that stormy night, I knew you were different. Special. I just needed an excuse to spend time with you, to show you that we could be good together." Alexander Blackthorne. Margaret tried to look scandalized but couldn't stop smiling. "You manipulated me. I prefer to think of it as creative courtship." Alexander dipped her dramatically. "Besides, it worked, didn't it?" Margaret laughed until tears streamed down her cheeks. "You're impossible, and you love me anyway." "I do." Margaret reached up to cup his cheek. "Forever and always. I love you forever and always. Forever and always." Alexander agreed. And as they danced together in the candlelight, surrounded by love and laughter and the promise of their future, Margaret realized that sometimes the best things in life started with the most impossible requests. He'd asked her to pretend to be his wife for one night. She hadn't known he meant forever, but forever, it turned out, was exactly what she wanted. Now, that's what I call a story worth sharing. If you enjoyed this tale of unexpected love and second chances, make sure to let me know in the comments below. What did you think of Margaret's journey from desperate daughter to beloved Duchess, and Alexander's transformation from lonely duke to devoted husband? Don't forget to subscribe for more sweeping historical romance stories. We've got tales of forbidden love, secret marriages, and passionate encounters that will keep you coming back for more. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the most unlikely beginnings. Sweet dreams, and may your own fairy tale be waiting just around the corner. The cold stone of the chapel floor felt like ice beneath Isabella's knees. She had come here to pray, to find peace in the silence that only God's house could offer. But what she found instead would change her life forever. Blood, dark red blood, pooling around a man's body near the altar. Her heart stopped, then raced like a wild horse. The man lay still, too still. His dark hair was matted with crimson. His fine clothes were torn and stained, and his face, even pale with pain. He was the most beautiful man she had ever seen. Isabella rose to her feet. Her simple brown dress rustled in the silence. She took a step forward, then another. "Stop!" The voice echoed through the chapel like thunder. Father Marcus stood in the doorway. His black robes made him look like a shadow against the morning light. "You will not touch him," the priest commanded. His voice was cold, final. Isabella's hands trembled. "But Father, he's dying. We must help him." "No." Father Marcus walked closer. His footsteps echoed on the stone. "This man is cursed, damned. Anyone who touches him will share his fate." The words hit Isabella like a slap. She looked at the bleeding man, at his pale lips, at the way his chest barely moved with each breath. "How can you know this?" she whispered. "Because I know who he is." The priest's eyes were hard as stone. "He is Lord Adrian Blackwood, the devil's own son." Isabella had heard the name whispered in the village. Stories of a lord who lived in the dark castle on the hill. A man who never came to church, who was said to practice dark magic, who had made a deal with Satan himself. But looking at him now, bleeding and broken, he looked nothing like a monster. He looked like a man who needed help. "Stand back, child," Father Marcus ordered. "Let God's will be done." Isabella's heart pounded. Every part of her wanted to obey. She had been raised to respect the church, to follow God's word. But another part of her, a stronger part, couldn't watch a man die. "No," she said softly. "What did you say?" "I said no." Isabella's voice grew stronger. "I won't let him die." Before the priest could stop her, she dropped to her knees beside the wounded man. Her hands shook as she reached for him. The moment her fingers touched his skin, the world changed. Heat, pure, burning heat, shot through her body. Not painful heat, but something else. Something that made her gasp, made her heart race, made every nerve in her body come alive. His eyes opened, dark blue eyes, like the depths of the ocean. They fixed on her face with an intensity that stole her breath. "Angel," he whispered. His voice was rough, deep. It made something flutter in her stomach. "I'm not an angel," Isabella said. "I'm just Isabella." "Isabella." He said her name like it was a prayer, like it was the most beautiful word he had ever heard. Behind her, Father Marcus made a sound of pure horror. "Child, what have you done? You've doomed us all." But Isabella couldn't look away from those blue eyes, couldn't take her hands off his warm skin. Something was happening to her, something she didn't understand, something wonderful and terrifying. "You're bleeding," she said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, breathless, shaky. "It doesn't matter now," Adrian said. His hand came up to cover hers. His touch sent another wave of heat through her body. "You touched me. No one has touched me in 10 years. 10 years? Isabella's mind reeled. "Why?" "Because I am cursed, Angel, just as the priest says. Cursed to be alone, to hurt everyone I care about. But you," his thumb stroked across her knuckles, "you're not afraid." She should be afraid. Every rational part of her mind screamed that she should run, should listen to Father Marcus, should get as far away from this man as possible. But she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think of anything but the way he was looking at her, like she was a miracle, like she was everything he had ever wanted. "Help me sit up," he said quietly. Isabella slipped her arm around his shoulders. His body was solid, strong. Even wounded, she could feel the power in him. The moment she touched him, his wounds began to heal before her eyes. The cuts on his face closed. The blood stopped flowing. Color returned to his pale cheeks. Father Marcus stumbled backward. "Witchcraft! Dark magic! The devil himself works through this woman." But Isabella barely heard him. She was lost in Adrian's eyes, lost in the feeling of his body against hers, lost in something bigger than both of them. "How is this possible?" she breathed. "I don't know," Adrian said. He sat up fully now, completely healed. His hand cupped her face with infinite gentleness. "But I know I've been waiting my whole life for you." The words should have frightened her. They were strangers. She knew nothing about him except terrible stories. But somehow, deep in her heart, she felt the truth of what he said. She had been waiting for him too. "Isabella, get away from him." Father Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. "Can't you see what he's doing to you? He's corrupting your very soul." Adrian's jaw tightened. His eyes never left Isabella's face, but she could feel the anger radiating from him. "The only corruption here, priest, is your own fear," Adrian said. His voice was calm, but Isabella could hear the steel beneath it. "This woman has shown more godliness in one moment than you have in your entire life." "How dare you?" Father Marcus sputtered. "I serve God. I protect this village from evil. And You are evil incarnate. Adrian finally looked at the priest. When he did, Isabella saw something that made her shiver. Not with fear, but with excitement. Power, raw, incredible power that seemed to fill the entire chapel. Am I? Adrian asked softly. Then tell me, Father, if I am so evil, how is it that this pure woman's touch healed me? How is it that standing in God's own house, touching his servant, I am not struck down? Father Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He had no answer. Perhaps, Adrian continued, rising to his feet and pulling Isabella with him, your understanding of good and evil is not as complete as you believe. Isabella felt dizzy, standing so close to him. He was tall, much taller than her. She had to tilt her head back to look at his face. And what a face it was. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, and those eyes that seemed to see straight into her soul. I should go, she whispered, but she made no move to leave. Should you? Adrian asked. His hand was still holding hers. His thumb traced circles on her palm that sent shivers up her arm. Or should you stay and learn the truth? The truth? About me. About why I'm really cursed. About why the priest wants you to believe I'm a monster. Isabella looked back at Father Marcus. The man's face was red with anger, and something else. Something that looked like fear. Don't listen to him, child, the priest said. His voice was shaking now. He'll fill your head with lies, make you believe black is white and wrong is right. Will I? Adrian asked. He stepped closer to Isabella, so close she could feel the heat from his body, could smell his scent like pine and leather and something uniquely him. Or will I simply tell her what you've hidden from this entire village for 20 years? Father Marcus went white. You wouldn't dare. Try me. The two men stared at each other. Isabella felt like she was watching a battle between two forces she didn't understand. But she knew, somehow, that her future hung in the balance. What is he talking about? She asked the priest. Nothing, Father Marcus said quickly. Lies and blasphemy. That's all he knows. But his eyes wouldn't meet hers. And Isabella had grown up in this village. She knew when someone was lying. Tell her, Adrian said. His voice was soft, but it carried absolute command. Tell her why you really don't want her to touch me. I won't listen to this, Father Marcus said. He turned toward the door. Isabella, you will come with me now. Your mother will be worried sick. At the mention of her mother, Isabella felt a pang of guilt. Her mother was ill, had been for months. Isabella spent every day caring for her, trying to make her comfortable. Her mother was the reason she had come to the chapel to pray. Yes, she said quietly, I should go home. But when she tried to pull her hand free from Adrian's, he held on gently but firmly. Please, he said. Give me 1 hour. Let me tell you my story. The real story. If, after that, you want to leave and never see me again, I won't stop you. Isabella looked into his eyes. They were so blue, so sincere, so full of pain and hope and something else that made her stomach flutter. 1 hour, she heard herself say. Father Marcus made a sound of rage. You foolish girl, you'll regret this for the rest of your very short life. He stormed out of the chapel, his robes billowing behind him. The heavy wooden door slammed shut with a sound like thunder, and then they were alone. Isabella suddenly became aware of how quiet it was, how intimate. She was alone with a man she didn't know, in God's house, holding his hand like she had every right to. You're frightened, Adrian said softly. A little, she admitted. Of me? She looked at him again. Really looked at him. At the kindness in his eyes. At the gentle way he held her hand. At the way he had let her pull away earlier, even though she could tell he didn't want to. "No," she said, surprising herself. "Not of you." "Then what?" "Of myself," she whispered. "Of the way you make me feel." Adrian's eyes darkened. His free hand came up to cup her cheek. "And how do I make you feel?" "Like I'm on fire," she breathed. "Like I'm flying. Like I'm dying and being born at the same time." He smiled. Then, the first real smile she had seen from him, it transformed his entire face, made him even more beautiful than she had thought possible. "I know the feeling," he said. Before she could ask what he meant, he was leading her toward the front pew. They sat down side by side, still holding hands. "My story begins 20 years ago," Adrian said. "I was 15 years old, the heir to the Blackwood estate. My parents were good people. Isabella, they gave to the poor. They treated their servants well. They came to this very chapel every Sunday." Isabella listened, captivated by his deep voice, by the way the morning light streaming through the stained glass windows cast colored shadows on his face. "My father had been having disagreements with the church," Adrian continued. "Not with God, but with certain members of the clergy who were less than honest." "What kind of disagreements?" "Father Marcus had been taking money from the church funds, money meant for the poor and sick. My father found out and confronted him." Isabella's heart sank. She had wondered why there never seemed to be enough help for people like her mother, why the church always claimed to have no funds for medicine or food. "What happened?" "Father Marcus denied everything, of course. But my father had proof. He was going to report it to the bishop. Have Marcus removed from his position." Adrian's jaw tightened. "So Marcus struck first." "How?" "He convinced the village that my family practiced dark magic. He spread rumors, told lies, made people afraid of us." Adrian's eyes grew distant. "Then one night, someone set fire to our house while we slept." Isabella gasped. "Oh no, my parents died in the fire. I barely escaped. And when I tried to come to the village for help, everyone turned their backs on me. They believed the priest's lies." "That's horrible," Isabella whispered. "But that wasn't the worst of it," Adrian said. "Marcus wasn't content to just destroy my family. He wanted to make sure I could never expose him, so he cursed me." "Cursed you how?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was filled with pain. "He cursed me so that anyone I touched with love or affection would die. Horribly. Within days." Isabella's blood ran cold. "That's not possible, isn't it?" Adrian looked at her. "You've touched me, Isabella. Held my hand. Let me touch your face. Do you feel sick? Do you feel death creeping into your bones?" She took inventory of her body. She felt amazing, energized, more alive than she had ever felt in her life. "No," she said. "Neither do I," Adrian said. "For the first time in 20 years, I've touched another human being and felt nothing but joy." He lifted their joined hands and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. The touch of his lips on her skin sent fire racing through her veins. "But how is that possible?" she asked. "I think," Adrian said softly, "it's because you're my mate." "You're what?" "The one person in all the world who was meant to be mine. The one person whose love can break any curse." The words should have sounded crazy, impossible. But sitting there in the chapel, holding his hand, feeling the rightness of being near him, Isabella found herself believing. "How do you know?" she whispered. "Because the moment you touched me, everything changed. The darkness that has lived in my heart for 20 years disappeared. The cold that has frozen my soul melted away. You healed me, Isabella, not just my wounds, but my very spirit." Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. Adrian, I know it's too much too fast, he said quickly. I know you barely know me. I know you have no reason to trust me or believe me. But Isabella, I'm telling you the truth. You are my salvation, my redemption, my everything. The tears spilled over then, not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming emotion, of recognition, of coming home. I feel it too, she whispered. From the moment I saw you lying there, something in me knew you were important. Knew you were yours, Adrian finished. Mine, she agreed. He leaned closer then. So close she could see the flecks of silver in his blue eyes, could count his dark eyelashes, could feel his breath on her lips. May I kiss you? He asked. Isabella's heart hammered against her ribs. She had never been kissed, had never even thought about being kissed. But she wanted his kiss more than she wanted her next breath. Yes, she breathed. His lips touched hers, soft as a butterfly's wing, gentle, reverent, like he was afraid she might disappear. But Isabella didn't want gentle. She wanted more. She pressed closer to him, her free hand coming up to tangle in his dark hair. Adrian groaned against her lips. The sound sent heat pooling in her belly. He deepened the kiss, his arm coming around her waist to pull her closer. Isabella had never felt anything like it. Like fire and ice and lightning all at once. Like every nerve in her body was singing. Like she was finally truly alive. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. My God, Adrian whispered. Isabella. She couldn't speak. Could only stare at him with wide eyes and swollen lips. I love you, he said suddenly. I know it's crazy. I know it's too soon. But I love you with everything in me. I love you too, she said, surprising herself. But it was true. Somehow, impossibly, she did love him. Is that wrong? No, Adrian said fiercely. It's the only right thing in this whole cursed world. They sat there holding each other, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. Isabella felt like she could stay that way forever. But reality came crashing back when they heard voices outside the chapel. Angry voices. Adrian tensed. They're coming for me. Who? The villagers. Marcus has probably told them you're under my spell, that I've corrupted you. Fear shot through Isabella. Not for herself, but for Adrian. What will they do? Try to kill me, most likely. No, Isabella gripped his hand tighter. I won't let them. Adrian smiled sadly. My brave angel. But you can't fight the whole village. Then we'll run, Isabella said desperately. We'll go somewhere they can't find us.
I can't ask you to give up your life for me.
You're not asking, I'm choosing. Isabella stood up, pulling him with her. My life is wherever you are. The voices were getting closer. Isabella could make out individual words now. Witch, devil, kill. Adrian looked toward the door, then back at her. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He kissed her again, hard and desperate. Then we run. They made it to the back of the chapel just as the front doors burst open. Isabella caught a glimpse of Father Marcus leading a crowd of angry villagers, all carrying torches and weapons. There! Marcus shouted, he has the girl, stop them! But Adrian was already pushing open a small door behind the altar. A door Isabella had never noticed before. They slipped through just as the mob reached them. The door led to a narrow staircase that spiraled up into darkness. Adrian pulled Isabella up the stairs, their footsteps echoing in the confined space. Behind them, she could hear the villagers shouting, trying to break down the door. Where does this lead? Isabella panted. The bell tower, Adrian said. From there we can get to the roof and climb down the outside wall. They reached the top of the stairs, The bell tower was small and cramped, with narrow windows that let in slivers of sunlight. Isabella could see the entire village spread out below them. "It's so high," she breathed. "Don't look down," Adrian said. He was already at one of the windows, testing the stone ledge outside. "Can you climb?" "I don't know." He turned to her, his hands cupping her face. "Isabella, listen to me. I need you to be brave for just a little longer. Can you do that?" She nodded, drawing strength from his eyes. "Good girl." He kissed her forehead. "I'll go first. Then I'll help you down." The sound of splintering wood came from below. The villagers had broken through the door. "Hurry," Isabella urged. Adrian swung his leg over the windowsill. For a moment, Isabella's heart stopped as she watched him balance on the narrow ledge. Then he was climbing down, moving with surprising grace for such a tall man. "Come on," he called softly when he was a few feet down. "Take my hand." Isabella looked down at the crowd gathering below. They had seen Adrian climbing down, were pointing and shouting. Fear paralyzed her. She couldn't move. "Isabella!" Adrian's voice was urgent. "They're coming up the stairs." She could hear the thundering footsteps getting closer. In moments, they would reach the bell tower. "I can't," she whispered. "Yes, you can," Adrian said firmly. "Look at me, Angel. Only at me." She met his eyes, saw the love and faith and absolute confidence he had in her. "I won't let you fall," he promised. "I swear on my soul, I won't let you fall." Isabella took a deep breath. Then she climbed through the window. The ledge was narrower than it looked. The stone was crumbling in places, but Adrian's hand was strong and sure as he guided her down. "That's it," he murmured. "You're doing perfectly." They were halfway down when Father Marcus appeared at the bell tower window. "Stop," he shouted. "In the name of God, I command you to stop." "Your commands have no power here," Adrian called back. "Not anymore." They reached the ground, just as the villagers surrounded them. Isabella found herself pressed against Adrian's chest, his arms around her protectively. "Let the girl go," Marcus demanded, as he pushed through the crowd. "She's done nothing wrong. It's not too late to save her soul." "Her soul doesn't need saving," Adrian said coldly. "But yours might." "How dare you speak to me that way? I am a man of God." "Are you?" Adrian's voice carried clearly across the square. "Then tell them, priest. Tell them how you've been stealing from them for 20 years. Tell them how the money meant for their sick children and starving families has been lining your own pockets." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Isabella saw doubt creeping into some faces. "Lies." Marcus sputtered. "Don't listen to him. He's the devil himself." "Then prove it," Adrian said calmly. "Show them your records. Open your books. Let them see where every coin has gone." Marcus's face went white, then red. "I don't have to prove anything to you." "No," said a voice from the crowd, "but you do to us." Isabella recognized the speaker. Thomas the blacksmith, a good man whose wife had died last winter because they couldn't afford medicine. "Thomas, don't listen to this demon," Marcus pleaded. "My Sarah died because you said the church had no money for medicine," Thomas said, his voice growing louder. "But you wear fine robes, eat fine food, live in a fine house." More voices joined in. Other villagers who had lost loved ones, who had gone hungry while watching the priest live in luxury. "Now wait just a minute," Marcus said desperately. But it was too late. The crowd was turning. The anger that had been directed at Adrian was now focused on the priest. "We should go," Adrian murmured in Isabella's ear, while they're distracted. But Isabella was looking at the faces around them. These were her people, her neighbors. She had grown up with many of them. "No," she said suddenly. I won't run anymore. Isabella. No, Adrian, I'm tired of lies, tired of fear, tired of good people suffering while evil men prosper. She stepped forward, out of Adrian's protective embrace. I have something to say. The crowd quieted, all eyes turning to her. I've known most of you my whole life, Isabella said, her voice carrying clearly in the morning air. You know me. You know I'm not evil. You know I would never willingly serve the devil. Nods and murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Then trust me now when I tell you that Lord Adrian is not the monster you've been told he is. He's a good man, a man whose family was murdered by the very priest who stands before you now. That's not true, Marcus protested. Isn't it? Isabella turned to face him directly. Then explain to them how you knew he was in the chapel this morning, how you knew exactly who he was the moment you saw him, how you knew so much about his supposed curse. The priest's mouth opened and closed without sound. You knew because you created the curse, Isabella continued. You killed his parents and tried to kill him, and when that failed, you made sure he could never expose your crimes by convincing everyone he was evil. The crowd was completely silent now. Even the wind seemed to have stopped blowing. But curses can be broken, Isabella said softly, by love, by truth, by people brave enough to see past lies and fear. She reached for Adrian's hand. The moment their fingers touched, a warm golden light seemed to radiate from their joined hands. Several people in the crowd gasped. Others fell to their knees. The curse is broken, Isabella announced. The truth is revealed. Lord Adrian is free to live and love and be happy, as we all should be. The golden light grew brighter, encompassing both Isabella and Adrian. When it faded, they stood transformed. Not physically, but somehow more radiant, more beautiful, more right. Witchcraft, Marcus screamed. Dark magic, can't you see? But no one was listening to him anymore. Because in that moment, everyone could see the truth, could feel it in their hearts, could see the love and purity radiating from the couple before them. Thomas the blacksmith stepped forward. Lord Adrian, he said formally, I owe you an apology. We all do. There's no need, Adrian said gently. You were lied to, manipulated. That's not your fault. What should we do with him? Thomas nodded toward Father Marcus, who was backing away toward the church. That's not for me to decide, Adrian said. Justice should come from you, the people he wronged. The crowd turned as one to look at the priest. Marcus took one look at their faces and ran. He made it perhaps 10 steps before Thomas and several other men caught him. Please, Marcus begged. I can explain everything. Oh, you will, Thomas said grimly. You most certainly will. As the villagers led their corrupt priest away, Adrian turned to Isabella. That was incredibly brave, he said, and incredibly foolish. Was it? You could have been killed. They could have turned on both of us. Isabella smiled. But they didn't, because love is stronger than fear. Truth is stronger than lies. Adrian pulled her into his arms. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, Isabella said with a teasing smile, but you're stuck with me anyway. He laughed, the sound rich and joyful. Forever, forever. He kissed her then, right there in the village square, in front of God and everyone, and this time Isabella kissed him back with everything she had. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. So what happens now? Isabella asked. Now, Adrian smiled. Now we go home. Where is home? Wherever you are, he said simply. Isabella felt tears prick her eyes again. Happy tears, this time. But first, Adrian continued, I should probably meet your mother, ask for her blessing. Oh, Isabella gasped. Mother, I forgot all about her. She'll be so worried. Then we'd better hurry, Adrian said. Hand in hand, they walked through the village toward Isabella's small cottage. People came out of their houses to watch them pass. But instead of fear or anger, Isabella saw curiosity, hope, even smiles. The curse was truly broken. Her mother was waiting in the doorway when they arrived. Isabella had expected her to be frantic with worry. Instead, she was smiling. Hello, dear, her mother said calmly. I see you found him. Found him? Isabella was confused. The man from my dreams, her mother explained. The one I've been seeing for weeks now. The one I told you was coming for you. Isabella remembered now her mother's strange dreams, her insistence that Isabella's true love was on his way. Isabella had thought it was just the fever talking. Mother, this is Adrian, Isabella said. Adrian, this is my mother, Elena. Adrian bowed formally. Mrs. Elena, I'm honored to meet you. None of that formal nonsense, Elena said with a wave of her hand. Your family now, come in, both of you. You look like you could use some food and rest. They followed her into the small cottage. Isabella was amazed to see that her mother looked better than she had in months. Her color was good. Her breathing was easy. Her eyes were bright and alert. Mother, you look, Isabella began. Better? Elena smiled. I feel better, much better. It's amazing what hope can do for a person's health. They sat around the small kitchen table while Elena bustled about, preparing food. Isabella watched her mother move with more energy than she had shown in ages. It's you, Isabella whispered to Adrian. Somehow, you're healing her too. Not me, Adrian said quietly. Us, our love. It's powerful. Isabella squeezed his hand under the table. She was beginning to understand that what they had was more than just love. It was something special, something magical, something that could heal not just them but everyone around them. So, Elena said, setting bowls of soup in front of them, when's the wedding? Isabella choked on her soup. Mother, what? You think I'm blind? I can see the way you two look at each other. Besides, you've been holding hands since you walked in here. Isabella blushed. She hadn't even realized she was still holding Adrian's hand. Actually, Adrian said, I was hoping to discuss that with you. I know it's unusual, but I'd like your permission to marry your daughter. You have it, Elena said immediately. Just like that? Isabella asked. Just like that. Elena sat down across from them. Isabella, I've been sick for months, dying, really. But today, for the first time in ages, I feel alive. I feel hope, and it's because of him. She nodded toward Adrian. Because of what you two have together. Isabella felt tears threaten again. Mother, hush child, let me finish. Elena reached across the table to take both their hands. I don't know what kind of magic brought you two together, but I know it's good magic. Pure magic. The kind that comes from God himself. She squeezed their hands. So yes, you have my blessing, my permission, my joy. Marry him. Isabella. Be happy. Create the kind of love that can heal the world. The tears came then. Happy tears that Isabella couldn't hold back. Thank you, Adrian said quietly. You don't know what this means to me. Oh, I think I do, Elena said with a knowing smile. I think I do. They spent the rest of the day planning. The wedding would be small, simple, just the three of them, and a few close friends. They would hold it in the chapel where they first met. Are you sure about the chapel? Elena asked. After everything that happened there? I'm sure, Isabella said. That's where our love story began. It's where it should be blessed. As the sun began to set, Adrian rose to leave. Where are you going? Isabella asked. Back to the castle. I should check on things. Make sure the villagers who went to arrest Marcus are all right. I'm coming with you, Isabella said immediately. Isabella, it's not proper. We're not married yet. Since when do we care about proper? Isabella laughed. Besides, I'm not letting you out of my sight. What if the curse comes back when we're apart? Adrian smiled. It won't. But if it makes you feel better, you can come. It does. Alina hugged them both. Goodbye. Be careful, she said, and be happy. The walk to Blackwood Castle took an hour. Isabella had never been this close to it before. It loomed dark and forbidding against the evening sky. It looks scary, she admitted. It is scary, Adrian said. It's been empty for 20 years. No servants, no maintenance, just me and the ghosts of my past. But as they approached the main gate, something extraordinary happened. Lights began appearing in the windows. Not the cold, flickering light of candles, but warm, golden light that seemed to come from within the very stones. Adrian, Isabella breathed. Look, the castle was transforming before their eyes. The crumbling walls straightened and strengthened. The broken windows repaired themselves. The rusted gate swung open with a welcoming creak. I don't understand, Adrian whispered. I do, Isabella said. It's coming back to life, because you are. They walked through the gates together. The courtyard, which Adrian said had been choked with weeds that morning, was now a garden of impossible beauty. Roses bloomed everywhere, filling the air with their sweet scent. Inside the castle, it was even more miraculous. Dust sheets fell away to reveal beautiful furniture. Portraits on the walls brightened and came into focus. Fireplaces roared to life, filling the great hall with warmth and light. My parents, Adrian said, staring at a portrait above the main fireplace. I thought it was destroyed in the fire. Isabella looked at the painting. A handsome man with Adrian's eyes and a beautiful woman with a kind smile. They looked happy, peaceful, and somehow she felt like they were smiling down at her with approval. They're beautiful, she said. They would have loved you, Adrian said, almost as much as I do. He showed her through the castle, room by room. Each one came to life as they entered it. The library filled with books. The music room revealed a beautiful piano. The dining room set itself with fine china and crystal. It's like a fairy tale, Isabella murmured. You're my fairy tale, Adrian said. My happy ending. They ended up in what had once been his parents' room. Now, Isabella supposed it would be their room. The thought made her blush and shiver at the same time.
Are you cold?
Adrian asked, noticing her shiver. No, she said softly. Just thinking. About what? About tomorrow. About being your wife. Adrian's eyes darkened. He stepped closer to her, his hands coming up to frame her face. Are you frightened? He asked gently. A little, she admitted. I don't know. I mean, I've never... Neither have I, Adrian said quietly. Isabella's eyes widened. Really? Really? I've been alone for 20 years, remember? Couldn't touch anyone without killing them. His thumbs stroked across her cheekbones. You'll be my first, my only, my everything. The tenderness in his voice made Isabella's heart ache with love. I want to be, she whispered. I want to be yours in every way. Tomorrow, Adrian said. After we're married. Tomorrow, Isabella agreed. But that night, they lay together in the great bed, fully clothed, just holding each other, just reveling in the miracle of touch, of closeness, of love. Isabella had never felt so safe, so cherished, so completely right. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Adrian whispered back. "Forever and always." The next morning dawned bright and clear. Isabella woke in Adrian's arms, feeling like she was living in a dream. "Good morning, my love," Adrian murmured against her hair. "Good morning," Isabella smiled. "Ready to get married?" "I've been ready my whole life." They returned to the village to find it buzzing with activity. Word of their engagement had spread, and it seemed like everyone wanted to help with the wedding preparations. The chapel had been cleaned and decorated with flowers. Someone had baked a cake. The village women had even found Isabella a beautiful white dress that fit her perfectly. "Where did this come from?" Isabella asked in wonder. "It was my grandmother's," said Mrs. Patterson, the baker's wife. "She always said it would find its way to the right bride someday." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "It's beautiful. Thank you." As she got dressed, surrounded by the women of the village, Isabella marveled at how much had changed in just 2 days. These same women had been ready to watch her burned as a witch. Now they were helping her prepare for her wedding. "Love changes everything," her mother said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "Yes," Isabella said, "it does." The ceremony was simple but beautiful. Thomas the blacksmith had agreed to perform it, since Father Marcus was locked up awaiting trial. The entire village attended, filling the chapel with warmth and joy. Adrian looked impossibly handsome in a dark blue coat that matched his eyes. When Isabella walked down the aisle on her mother's arm, his face lit up like the sun. "Dearly beloved," Thomas began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of 2 souls who have found in each other their perfect match." Isabella barely heard the words. She was lost in Adrian's eyes, in the love and promise she saw there. "Do you, Adrian Blackwood, take Isabella to be your wife, to love and cherish her in sickness and in health, for better or worse, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Adrian said, his voice clear and strong, "with all my heart and soul." "Then do you, Isabella, take Adrian to be your husband, to love and cherish him, in sickness and in health, for better or worse, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Isabella said, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Then by the power vested in me by this community, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Thomas smiled. "You may kiss your bride." Adrian's hands cupped Isabella's face gently, reverently. When his lips met hers, the entire chapel filled with that same golden light they had seen before, but stronger this time, more radiant. The light seemed to touch everyone present, filling them with warmth and joy and hope. When it faded, Isabella and Adrian were no longer just husband and wife. They were something more, something blessed. The celebration lasted well into the night. There was dancing and singing, and more food than Isabella had ever seen. Adrian never left her side, his hand always touching hers, his eyes always on her face. "Have I told you today how beautiful you are?" he murmured in her ear, as they danced. "Only about 100 times," Isabella laughed. "Not nearly enough then." As the evening wound down, they said their goodbyes and walked back to the castle hand in hand. Isabella's heart was pounding with anticipation and nervousness. "Second thoughts?" Adrian asked, noticing her quietness. "Never," Isabella said firmly. "Just nervous." "We'll go slow," Adrian promised. "We have forever." The castle welcomed them home with warm light and the scent of roses. Someone, or something, had prepared the master bedroom with candles and fresh flowers. Rose petals were scattered across the bed. "It's beautiful," Isabella breathed. "Not as beautiful as you," Adrian said. He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Isabella, Are you sure about this? We can wait if you want. Take more time. I don't want to wait, Isabella said. I want to be your wife in every way. Tonight, Adrian's eyes flamed with desire and love. Then, let me love you, he whispered. Let me show you how precious you are to me. What happened next was beautiful beyond words. Gentle and passionate and perfect. Adrian worshipped her body with his hands and lips, showing her pleasures she had never imagined, and when they finally came together as one, Isabella felt complete for the first time in her life. Afterward, they lay entwined in the candlelight, speaking soft words of love. No regrets? Adrian asked, stroking her hair. Only that we waited so long, Isabella teased. We've only known each other 3 days. It feels like forever. Like I've been waiting my whole life for you. You have, Adrian said seriously. Just like I've been waiting for you. Isabella traced patterns on his chest with her finger. Adrian, what happens now? Do we just live happily ever after? I hope so, but I suspect our love is meant for more than just our own happiness. What do you mean? I mean, I think we're meant to help people, to heal them, to bring hope and light wherever there's darkness. Isabella considered this. It made sense. Their love had already healed Adrian's curse, her mother's illness, and the corruption in their village. I'd like that, she said. Using our love to help others. Then that's what we'll do, Adrian said. Together. Together, Isabella agreed. They fell asleep in each other's arms, and Isabella dreamed of golden light spreading across the land, touching everyone with hope and healing. She woke to find Adrian already awake, watching her with a soft smile. Good morning, wife, he said. Good morning, husband, Isabella replied, still marveling at the words. They were interrupted by a knock at the castle gates. Adrian threw on a robe and went to see who it was, returning with a young man Isabella didn't recognize. This is Peter, Adrian explained. He's traveled from 3 villages over. His sister is very ill, and he's heard about. He wants us to help her, Isabella said. It wasn't a question. Yes, but Isabella, I don't want you to feel obligated. This is your choice. Isabella was already getting dressed. Of course we'll help her. That's what love is for. And so began their new life together. They traveled from village to village, helping where they could. Their touch could heal the sick. Their presence could bring peace to the troubled. Their love could mend broken hearts and broken families. Word of their gifts spread far and wide. People came from all over the kingdom seeking their help, and Isabella and Adrian never turned anyone away. They learned that their power was strongest when they worked together, when they joined hands, focused their love and let it flow outward to others. It was exhausting work, but deeply fulfilling. Years passed. Isabella and Adrian grew older, but their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing day. Each person they helped, each person they helped, each life they touched. They had children of their own. Eventually, beautiful children who inherited their parents' gift for healing and hope. The Blackwood Castle became a place of pilgrimage where people came seeking not just physical healing, but spiritual renewal. And always, at the center of it all, was the love between Isabella and Adrian. The love that had broken a curse, that had transformed a village, that had changed the world. Do you ever regret it? Isabella asked one evening, as they sat watching the sunset from their favorite spot in the castle gardens. They were both silver-haired now, lined with age, but still beautiful in each other's eyes. Regret what? Adrian asked. Touching me that day in the chapel, starting all of this. Adrian looked at her like she had said the most ridiculous thing in the world. Isabella, my love, my life, my heart, he said, That moment when you touched me was the moment I truly began to live. Everything before that was just existence. Everything after has been life. Real, beautiful, meaningful life. He took her hand, their fingers intertwining with the practiced ease of decades together. I regret nothing, he said firmly. Not a single moment, not a single choice, because every moment, every choice led me to you, led us to this life we've built together. Isabella smiled, tears of happiness in her eyes. I love you, Adrian Blackwood. And I love you, Isabella Blackwood, forever and always. As the sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Isabella reflected on the strange turns life could take. 3 days in a chapel had changed everything. A touch had broken a curse. Love had conquered fear. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, if you were very brave, if you were willing to trust your heart over your head, you could find your own fairy tale ending, even if it started with blood on a chapel floor and a priest's dire warnings. Sometimes the best love stories began in the most unexpected ways. And this one would continue forever. Thank you so much for listening to this story of forbidden love and second chances. If you enjoyed Isabella and Adrian's journey, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you thought of their story. Should I tell more tales of love conquering impossible odds? Subscribe for more historical romance stories that will sweep you away to another time and place. Until next time, remember that true love always finds a way.